Thanks guys for coming. Good morning. Quite a morning, quite a couple of days here. Cool and rainy and gray. We've had a spell of gray days. And as we approach fall with this cool weather, I think we can start to think like, oh God, I'm never going to make it through. But you will, because not every day will be gray. And every day is different. And look how far you've come. So let's start out in Baddha Konasana. If you're well onto the gluteals, sit up on the edge of a blanket. If you're sitting squarely on your sit bones, don't use a blanket. Your feet can be forward. They don't have to be pulled in close to the pelvis. And what we're looking for here is a difference in the height of the knees. And so this is my left knee. It's a little bit higher and the right knee is more open. So this inner thigh tends to be short for me. It's a pattern that I'm aware of. So this is what we start to observe and like, yes, okay, these patterns are here. How do I address them? So what I'm going to do is lift the right knee to the height of the left and then place the hands behind me on the floor. If you feel groin sensation, please put blocks so that we always raise the lower knee, okay? And then push down into the floor with your hands. Your hands are behind you to activate the sacrum, to activate the muscles of the low back via the push in the arms. And I'm going to work to keep this other knee the same height and not let it drop down. And I'm also going to push down more with the lower knee hand. So this right knee wants to open closer to the floor, but it's because the right side of the pelvis is tucking. So I need to push down with that hand more, activate that side of the low back more. And you might say, well, don't we just want the knees as low as they can go? Well, not because you're tucking the pelvis to get there, right? So the inner thigh releases, that's different than torquing the pelvis to achieve a false hip opening. All right, couple more breaths here. And the last few breaths, I'm only going to push with the lower knee hand. And as I push with that, I feel how this other leg relaxes and starts to release and open as I work to keep this knee high. And then let go. And we'll kind of see where we're at. Trying to see into the flurry of all the lighting that I now have. Let's see, I think they look a little bit more equal. All right. And then let's manually, please use your hands to close the knees. And then we'll transition to Virasana where we kneel. Block is always friendly early in the practice here to sit between the feet and hug the block with your heels with the inner ankle. Good. Thighs are parallel. And good. Close your eyes. Drop into the space of the body. And when we say drop, we're coming out of the head space and dropping into the three-dimensional experience of the body. There's a fullness to you. You're not a two-dimensional character drawn. You're not just your thoughts, which tend to be flat, thin lines, right? You're full, and you exist in this space and the fullness of time and the richness of the present moment. As you sit quietly and still, allow time to slow. And the present moment starts to get bigger, fuller. And the accelerator of the mind would like us to fast forward to a time where we feel like things would be different or more predictable, but are they ever really? They would just be something new. So it's a false delusion of the mind, right? Or an illusion of the mind. So we just let that go and we slow time down. We're not skipping days, months, weeks to imaginary futures. In this present moment, there are no problems. There might be situations to which you can attend to later, but in this very moment here, all is well. I hear the sound of the rain on the roof. I hear the gurgling of the fish tank here in the room. And the rain reminds me some of my favorite times as a child. I could just curl up with a book in my room and read. That's all I wanted to do, was just read and just be left alone. So rain has that really cozy feeling, and it also carries a little tinge of the end of the world. I was raised very conservative religiously, and just that story of Noah's Ark and just the rain that wouldn't stop. And so if we'd get these spells where it would rain and rain and rain, I'd be like, wow, God is mad. It's clearly the end of the world is happening. Where are the unicorns? Because I just, was always like, well, did the unicorns didn't make it to the ark. This is me as a little girl thinking these things. That's right. What about even at the end of the world, even when things seem like they're coming to an end, where is something that's fantastic and magical? That's what I was looking for. And see if you could even open that little portal now to the freer mind, this freer imagination, not doomsing the future, not dooming it, but what is possible here in a different dimension of myself that it would become available to me only under these circumstances. And scoop up with hands into a bowl, that precious feeling. It's even like a bowl of crystal liquid, right? You can bow the head and even with the eyes closed, right? The inner gaze into the liquid, this magic bowl, sacred water. And you can see into its reflection or even into its depths. Let that reveal itself to you. And then press the palms together at heart center. Bow your head. And then release the hands down. Shift forward to hands and knees. And it'll feel nice to get rid of the block and stretch one leg back at a time. Opening up the back of the knee, the calf. Change sides at your pace. And then find your way to a plank pose. We've been doing some of these stability poses a little earlier in the practice to hold the body together. We're going to keep it together so these parts aren't sliding and shearing against each other so much. A couple of breaths here. Good. And then taking the knees as wide as the mat and restore the lumbar curve. If you've already got the lumbar curve, it's pretty pronounced. Zip up the belly, tone, and then shift forward with the inhale, glide back with your exhale, and continue repeating that pattern at your pace. Restraining the shape so that the moment the pelvis wants to tuck under, you pause and go the other direction. The same thing as you head back. There's a certain point where the pelvis has to tuck. Pause right before there and then shift forward. If you get any compression in the low back or pressure in the hip crease, the knees can narrow. You can hug in instead of spreading the mat wide with the knees. Good. And then we'll point the feet, come back to child's pose. Walk your hands are in front of you, but they could walk a little bit closer to you. So there's a bend in the elbow, and then press the hands forward and down. So the back rounds a little more. The head can release between the arms. Look towards your navel, your belly button. Breathe into the back body. Without moving the hands, pull back through the hands, dragging them towards the knees. Lift the chin, firm the back. Take an inhale. Exhale, round, pushing the floor away. Head bows in. Inhale, back bend, chin up, firm between the shoulder blades. Exhale, round. One more time on your own. Very good. And then come up to hands and knees again and swing the pelvis from side to side. Feeling one side body lengthen and then the other. And as the body takes on this undulating side to side motion, you might notice that your head starts to move, the neck starts to move in response to the pelvis. When the pelvis swings right, the head goes right. When the pelvis swings left, the head looks left. And we can gradually move this into a bigger, more deliberate motion, looking towards your tush as your hips swing that way. And then go to the other side. Letting the eyes guide you, looking all the way around towards the back of the mat, even towards your ear. Good. And then we'll take the right arm up and twist. And the pelvis shifts right as we twist open, looking towards that top hand. Take a big inhale. Exhale, thread the needle, taking that right arm behind the left. Come up to the left fingertips, turn them towards your face. And then the pelvis shifted left as we did this, just like because of the same principles that were happening in the body as those side bends. So swing the pelvis right. Isometrically hug the knees in or spread the mat apart. Do what feels better to you. And push bottom arm, back of that arm down into the floor to stack the shoulders any amount. Look up towards your top ear softly. Finding your balance, take that left leg straight back. The foot can stay on the floor, or if you feel ready, could even float up off the floor. Good. Rebend left knee, and then push into that left hand, come back to center. And we'll sway the hips from side to side. You can do this with more rounding in the back if you feel like you need to round the back. And then we're waiting for that point where the head starts to want to follow the pelvis. Pelvis swings right, head looks right. Pelvis swings left, head looks left. And then twist open to your left. Look at that top hand. Feel the big inhale come into the lungs. Exhale, thread the needle. Left arm behind right. Come up onto right fingertips. Turn the fingertips towards your face. You can stack the shoulders. And notice that the pelvis is swinging way off to the right here. Guide it over to the left. Isometrically hugging the thighs in or spreading them apart, whatever feels better, through the sacrum, the back body here. And then look up towards the ceiling, towards that top ear as you press the bottom arm into the floor. Good. Optional here is to take that right leg back, toes tucked under, foot on the floor, or lift the leg. Maybe a slight external rotation in that thigh so the glute is holding the leg up. You don't feel it in your back in a negative way. And then right knee comes back to position. Flatten that right palm, push down into the floor, come back up to center, and we sway from side to side. Maybe you're in that rounded shape as you sway from side to side. This is interesting. When I round and I sway, my pelvis goes left and my head goes right. That's very interesting. All right. Now we'll make our way to downward facing dog. I'm going to do my first one holding the sides of the mat. Some of you hate that and you just want to do flat palms. You can always do that. Bonus of being home on your own. Pedal the feet. Watch the knees. Don't let them knock in as you bend one knee then the other. And reduce the amount that the hips are swinging now from side to side. We've been doing that a lot. You don't need it anymore. So hold the pelvis steady and still as you bend one knee at a time. Very good. And then we'll bring the knees down to the floor. Step that right foot forward, coming to the low lunge, pointing the back foot, and just turn the chest towards the front leg. We're not doing anything fancy with the arms, just a gentle twist. Hands to the outside of the thighs. If the hands are trying to bring the knee in, as the thigh says no, I'm going to stay wide. And that little action might even help increase the quad stretch for your back leg. Good. And then twist away from your front leg, using your right hand to push the front leg out to the side. I'm going to pat under my back knee. And I'm going to pivot, externally rotate that back leg. Your left foot will cross the midline a bit. And then you can shift forward and back and kind of exploring the hip opening here. Even starting to turn the head enough to look towards the back end of your mat. And very good. We'll bring both hands to the inside of the front leg, widen the front foot, tuck your back toes under, lift the back knee. And again, you can shift forward and back. If all you feel is pressure, compression in the front hip joint, raise the floor, even if you're flexible. All right, put your hands on blocks to do this. Okay, and then left hand stays on the floor. Right hand comes to the outside of the thigh. The hand tries to narrow the thigh, but the leg firmly says no, and that will twist all of you, rotate all of you towards your front leg, twisting right, shift forward and back. Good, then cut the back heel down, twist open to your left, bending into the front knee, maybe straightening it a little bit. Again, if you just feel compression in the front of the hip, as the hips warm up, it might feel better to be up on a block. See if you can look towards the back end of your mat. That's great. And then we'll turn back to face the front of the mat, step back to plank pose, shifting forward and back. And then downward facing dog. Pedal the feet. Don't let the knees knock. Feet should not be wider than the knees. Great. And then we'll come down to hands and knees, and the left foot comes forward, and we come up to vertical, both hands to the outside of the front thigh. Try to narrow the knee with the hands as the leg says no, and shift forward and back. And you're attempting to square the shoulders to the long edge of the mat. So you're turning left towards your front leg. And then we'll turn open away from the front leg. Blanket on the back knee is really helpful. And then swing that back foot across the midline so that back thigh rotates externally a little more. Shift forward and back. Your left hand will open the front knee away from the back knee. And look towards the back of the mat. Great. And then spin forward, both hands inside the front leg, widen the front foot, tuck back toes under, lift that back knee. You're in a high lunge, shift forward and back. Should be easy on the wrist because the legs are working strongly. It's okay to bow the head, look back towards that back foot, track that back knee so it's not spinning in. And then leave the right hand on the floor or a block and twist open towards the front leg. Everything turns, that back hip even drops. So we're letting everything rotate and look up towards that top hand. Shift forward and back. And then we'll change the pose, twist away from the front leg. Block is your friend here. To raise the floor so it's quiet in the hip crease. And look towards the back of the mat as you shift forward and back. Great. And then please turn towards the floor. Lift that back heel, narrow the front foot, step back to plank, and hold. A few breaths here. And exhale back to dog. Pedal the feet, watch the behavior of the knees. And then we'll hold dog and give a little bounce to the legs. So a little up and down. It's like you're on a trampoline, a softer surface. Good. And then we'll set the knees down, get the blanket out of the way, and lower to the forearms and let the back arch as we come into Sphinx, but on your knees. So we're not fully flat yet. Push the floor away and draw the shoulders back away from the ears. Unless that clunks, you don't have to, you can go too far, don't overdo it. A little rocking, shifting forward and back here, feeling the arch through the whole spine. Here we're working on getting the upper back and the rib cage to sink in our Sphinx. And then step back to a forearm plank. Holding that for 3 breaths. And then with control, lower the pelvis towards the floor. Could even hover. It's like an up dog on your forearms. And then touch down. I like to point the feet. Some of you that need more length in the low back should tuck those toes under. You could always play with that here. And then press into the hands. You might even lift the elbows, coming into a deeper sphinx, firming the upper back. Now we feel the arch in the low back more strongly, perhaps. And then widen the elbows, lower down to the belly, bend both knees, and then straighten them. So bending, straightening, straightening. And we're looking for this to happen with a fairly steady spinal position so that when you bend the knees, the butt's not sticking up with the belly pushing deeper into the floor. If you feel your pelvis moving up and down, like I'm showing, when you bend your knees, we need to tighten the tummy, firm the gluteals. And then we'll bend one knee at a time, sensitive to noticing any rotation in the pelvis. Again, the tightness in the quads and the relative weakness of the abdominals and gluteals will make the pelvis want to rotate when you bend the knee, like I'm showing here. So when you bend the left knee, the pelvis would sort of get heavier on that right hip point. The left hip point would lift. So instead, press straight leg into the floor, bend and straighten left leg, tone the tummy. Very good. Switch. Right leg bends and straightens. Hold the pelvis level. Good. And then we'll take goalpost with the arms, rest on the right ear. It's hard for me to do with glasses and hair and microphone. Bend left knee, push right foot into the floor, and then lift that left knee, and you're stacking the hips any amount. This is like what we would do in a downward facing dog. And you can feel that right shoulder dive to the floor. Get a little sphinxy in your arms. Press down through that right arm. As you reach that top leg up and over, tone the belly, and then come back to center. Very good. And then we'll switch. Head turns to the right. You're resting on your left ear. Push left leg down into the floor. Bend right knee. Stack the hips. And you can feel a stretch through the left chest, but add a little sphinx-like push through the forearm. Good. And now if that feels okay, we're going to go from side to side. Change the head. Change the leg. Go at your pace. You can use a strong exhale as you open into the twist so the belly tones. Great. And then we'll come back to center. I feel like I moved back like a foot. Interlace the fingers. Push down into the forearms, bow in, look towards your navel, lift the pelvis and the thighs, tuck the toes under. Dolphin plank. Lift your butt high, dolphin pose, downward dog on the forearms. Walk your feet in. You can lift the heels high. And then walk the feet in closer and closer towards the elbows to your capacity today. Pushing the floor away, the head never touches the floor. And then walk back out to the plank, dolphin plank. Separate the hands, push the forearms down into the floor, and we'll do our little sphinxy up dog. So letting the pelvis lower but not touch. And toes tucked under, you can push back through the heels. See how that feels for you. And then dolphin pose.
Hollow the belly, walk the feet in. The hands can stay separated if that feels tolerable. The thumbs won't fully ground here. It's anatomically impossible without the elbows splaying. Very good. And then we'll walk back out to that Sphinx up dog hybrid. I'm going to point my feet this time. You do what works best for you. Thighs stay off the floor, pelvis stays off the floor. 2 more breaths. And then softly release the pelvis down. Reach your arms straight out in front of you. Bend the left knee. Push the right leg down into the floor. Roll over onto your back. I know you're off your mat. You can stay there. It's okay if you have the room. Bend left knee, foot to the floor. Push the foot into the floor, left foot into the floor until the pelvis lifts and it starts to push over to the right and it rolls you back onto your belly. Bend right knee, push left leg down, lift that right leg up and it rolls you onto your back. Pause and feel. And then bend right knee, foot to the floor if you straighten that leg. Push right foot into the floor. The right buttock lifts and then that foot pushes you back over to your belly. And then we can just keep rolling from side to side. Use your legs to propel your twist. Arms can help, but your head, I want your head to just follow. Straight leg on the floor can do a lot to help push and propel you over as well. And the next time you're on your mat, press up into Sphinx. See if you can walk back to straighter arms, toes tucked under or feet pointing, whatever works for you. And then push into the feet, lift the pelvis into up dog, coming to straight arms. We've been building strength in the top of the foot. You can see how it works for you to come into a plank with the feet pointing. It feels like your feet are going to break. Don't do it. And then downward dog with the feet pointing. See how that is for you again. Cautious, careful, using common sense with the feet. And then we'll tuck the toes under, regular dog pose. Plain old dog. Good, and walk your hands back to your feet. Slide the hands up the shins halfway. Ardha Uttanasana, take your inhale. Exhale, fold. Inhale, come all the way up to standing. Circle the arms. Hands to heart center. Exhale. Great. So we need a little bit of wall space for our standing pose. So we'll take, doorway is great for this if it's not too short of a doorway. Right arm comes to the wall. You're about a foot away from the wall. The wall is to the right side of the body. Stand on your left leg. Lift the right foot off the floor. Press the pinky edge of the foot into the wall. It's pretty important that when you push here, we're feeling the work through the glute. You'll feel some work in the thigh, but if you push with the heel or roll the thigh in, you might feel it too much through the front of the thigh. So slight external rotation. Press the pinky edge of the foot into the wall, and you might say, well, I'm only feeling the work in the standing leg, Sarah. That's good too. If you feel it too much in the thigh, not enough in the glute, rotate the entire leg out externally, like towards 11 o'clock. Press the pelvis towards the wall. We don't want it to touch. We just don't want it to stick out to the left. So it's like an isometric push. And then skillfully use that right hand, push the right hand into the wall, and you might feel this Standing left glute and leg work more hard. Pull and drag that right hand isometrically towards the floor. It doesn't actually move on the wall, pretends to pull down, and we feel even stronger or just even more work through left leg. Good. Relax. Come out of the shape. Shake it out. Good. And then we'll try second side. So left hand goes up the wall. You're about a foot away from the wall. Left foot lifts, it pushes, pinky edge of the foot pushes into the wall. The pelvis shifts towards the wall. Press left palm into wall, drag left palm isometrically down. Feel the work connect the left side of the scapula across the low back to the work of the right glute. And if you don't feel it, slight external rotation to both legs. That's great. Back to the first side. Stand on the left leg, shift the pelvis right, press right foot into the wall. It's floating. It's not on the floor. It's not weight bearing at all. And then push right hand into wall isometrically down. And you might find like, well, I don't need to use my right leg at all, Sarah, because I'm using my right hand and this left leg are doing all this work. We're connecting diagonally. See where you can move this right knee forward, back. See if that feels pretty effortless and quiet because the stability is so good and strong. Good. Switch. Stand on right leg. Press left hand into wall. Press pelvis left. And it frees up the left leg to be able to move fairly relaxed and freely. Okay, did you guys feel that? Did that work? I really hope that worked for you. So we're going to try the tree pose at the wall. And what people tend to do with the tree pose is they tend to open the knee out to the side, which rotates the pelvis in order to turn out 90 degrees. That's why we turn the pelvis in our standing poses towards the front legs. That's the only way you can get that opening without shearing the hip joint. So when you come into tree pose, I want your knee to the wall, but the knee's going to have to be in front of you so the hips can be square. Okay. So bring the left leg into tree pose. Stand on your right leg. Your right leg is away from the wall. Your left knee is lightly touching the wall, and you square your hips. So your hips are pointing straight ahead, not turning towards the wall, not turning away from the wall. And then bring left hand up to the wall, push into the wall, and drag the hand down as your pelvis tries to shift left closer to the wall. And you'll feel that right leg fire up, and the left knee might even feel like it can leave the wall. Left hand is helping to power right glute. And then you could try taking that hand away and still pulling the hand isometrically down in air to feel the power of the standing leg. Good. Switch. Stand on left leg. Right knee comes into tree. The knee is in front of you so that hips are square. And press the pelvis towards the wall. Right hand comes up the wall and pulls down isometrically. Connect that right shoulder and scapula and latissimus all the way to the tone and work through the left low back and the left glute. That might allow that right knee to float, doesn't need to touch the wall. Even that right hand could come away and it still drags down isometrically as the pelvis tries to shift right isometrically. Hopefully that feels steady and strong. And then release. Very good. Come to hands and knees. Tuck toes under, downward facing dog. You can pull right hand towards left foot and left hand towards right foot to activate the stability in the shoulders. Once you've done that, feet step closer together, lift the left leg in the air. Allow the leg to slightly externally rotate. That's different than stacking the hips, guys. The hips are still level to the floor. Press the pelvis left and then connect that left hand and right foot towards one another. So you feel the work and stability through the left hand and the floor leg. Once you feel that, that left leg can start to climb higher and higher and higher. Keep the connection of the left hand to the right leg as you stack the hips. Don't let the weight crash to the right hand. Reach that leg across, and the right hand resists letting the right shoulder dip to the floor. That feels pretty damn good for a pose that can actually be very destabilizing. Come on back to the floor. Pull hands towards opposite feet. I'm doing a little bend to the elbow can help here. Elbows squeeze in towards the midline. When you're ready, lift right leg up. Leg can externally rotate so the glute holds it up instead of the low back, but do square the hips first. Connect right hand dragging towards left foot. Shift the pelvis right. If you look back, your left hip, your pelvis might be leaning way left. Shift it right. And then connect right hand, left glute. And then that will help that right leg start to be able to float higher. You can even bend the knee. And here we go. Stack the hips. Don't let the hips lean left. Keep pushing them to the right. Don't let the left shoulder dip. Resist. And then come back down to the floor, knees down, child's pose, arms by your sides. All that back body coiling helps the front body release and lengthen and stretch. And then we can come back to that sequence in order to step that leg through without tweaking our back. That's why I don't usually inhale, lift the leg, exhale, sweep it forward. It's just a super common way to tweak your sacrum, aggravate the low back. But if you get that coiling and that activation first, it prepares the body. It's just really hard to get that because it's easy to just kind of swing the leg up and swing it through with no sort of activation or protection. So let's see if we can feel it. Downward facing dog, pull hands towards opposite feet, and then lift that left leg slowly. Don't let the hips shift right, shift them left. Look at the pelvis. Pelvis moves left as you do this. That takes more work to the left arm, but then drag it towards the right foot so they connect. Start to stack the hips. Top hip to the ceiling, left hip to the ceiling, but bottom hip is still pushing left. Right hand resists the collapse. Feel the coiling of the back body. Take an inhale. Look between your hands. Exhale, step the foot forward. See how that was for you. And then come back to downward facing dog. We'll try the other side. Pull hands towards opposite feet. Lift right leg slowly. Shift pelvis right. Keep looking at the pelvis. Don't let it squirm out to the left. Bend the knee. Stack the hips. But as that knee moves open, you have to push the pelvis over to the right. Push left hand into floor. Take an inhale. Feel the coiling of the back body. All that tone in the back body. Inhale. Look between your hands. Exhale. Step the foot forward. Breathing here. And then step back to hands and knees. Take left leg back, lift the leg off the floor, external rotation, right arm forward. Breathing here. Lift high enough that you feel right shoulder and left glute connecting and the tone through the low back. And then switch. Right leg back, leg in the air, slight external rotation. Lift that left arm high enough, right leg high enough. They feel the connection of the shoulder and the glute and the tone through the low back. And then come back to child's pose. Press yourself to vertical and then come up to kneeling, step 1 foot forward, and then come up to standing. Okay, so we're working this in order to, part of what we're doing with the stabilization and the activation of the glute is to reduce the amount that a standing leg will twist in. And it can happen especially in triangle pose with a straight leg, and then especially in half moon, so that when we go to lift the leg or we come into the pose, as the hip rolls in, the thigh rolls in, and the pelvis and the low back collapse a bit, we get a pop in the joint. And it's usually completely pain-free, but it's a little signal, right, that the joint has subluxed. It's come out of its position and snapped across some connective tissue and made that pop. I used to deliberately pop my hip. Stopped doing that now for like 4 or 5 years. My hip is much happier, never hurt for a long time until it did. So let's see if we can take a standing pose with the right foot turning out 90 degrees and the back foot turning in. When the legs are straight, it's easier for the knee to roll in and for the joint to pop out of place. So we'll bend the front knee, lift the front heel. You have to tone up if you're quite flexible. And as you zip up, widen the knee and watch how the knee goes closer to the long edge of the mat and your butt moves towards the opposite one. Now that's what we were just doing in some of these other shapes, was moving the hips over, moving the pelvis away, right? So it doesn't stick way out to the side. So as that pelvis moves in, let the heel lightly touch down. Now study the leg. The whole leg should be parallel to the long edge of the mat as you come into the pose. To connect this front leg glute, butt cheek, to the opposite shoulder, we're going to twist. So without twisting the pelvis, just turn the ribs open and connect that top shoulder to the front leg glute, and then start to come into the pose. Hand finds the shin instead of a block, so the leg can try to bend and the hand says no, and we feel that tension between those two forces. Good. Look towards the top ear, bend into the front knee, shorten your stance, and then lift the back heel up. So you're just on the tip of the toe. Shift the pelvis forward towards the front body. So it's actually moving towards the left edge of your mat. So again, that butt's not sticking out to the side. Connect your top shoulder to your standing leg glute. For balance, you can look down if that's working better for you, and then start to lift that back leg up. And remember, the more you can connect top shoulder to bottom glute, the freer that leg, the left leg, will be to just lift up and do its own thing. And then let the back leg touch down, exit that shape, and we'll switch sides. So left leg turns out 90 degrees, back foot turns in. Bend into the front knee, lift the front heel, and shift the pelvis to the right so that front thigh is parallel to the long edge of the mat. Once you've got that, let's get this twist in a little bit sooner. You can still look towards the floor, but pull top shoulder back, connecting it to the front leg glute. Slowly straighten the leg without driving all the weight to the heel. Keeping the leg parallel to the long edge of the mat. Hand can slide down to the shin. Shin pushes forward as hand resists. And connect as best you can, glute and top shoulder. Keep that connection as you bend into the front knee, shorten the stance, lift the back heel, and once you find your balance, starting to lift that back leg, connecting top shoulder to front glute, and that back leg will just float up. And then let the back leg touch down, straighten the front leg, and then heel toe, step the feet into Tadasana pose. Close your eyes, breathe and feel. Good, and then we'll set up wide on the mat for a wide-legged forward fold. Line up the feet with the back edge of the mat. Feet are straight ahead. If you've got tight, short hamstrings, then the feet can turn in. Bend the knees slightly, hinge forward, hands to the floor. And then we'll do our side-to-side sort of speed skater action. So I'm going to lift the pinky edges of my feet because I supinate. I tend to roll to the outer edge and just feel a really yucky stretch in the outer ankle. However, if you have flat arches, I want you to keep rolling into that outer heel and pushing down. So push the right foot to the right, out to the right, and feel your pelvis shift left. Feel the stretch come into the inner thigh, and then switch sides. So you're pushing the foot down and away, letting the pelvis go to the other side from that action, feeling the inner thighs stretch come in. Alternate sides at your pace. And then keep the action in the feet, but don't let the pelvis shift as far. Maybe it goes about halfway as far as it could go. And then keep diminishing the amount that the pelvis moves, but keep alternating the work of the legs until the pelvis gets locked into center. Both feet are pushing down into the mat and isometrically apart. And that will allow you to hinge forward, fold all the way forward, and breathe. Keep the action in the legs. Push up to straight arms. Take your right hand to the floor, left hand to the hip. Now, as we twist open to the right, the pelvis wants to follow. So instead, push the pelvis. As we twist open to the left, the pelvis also wants to shift left. Don't let it. Shift it towards the back leg of the pose. So as you open to the left, you're shifting your pelvis to the right, stacking the shoulders, and then top arm up. And we'll switch sides. Top hand to the hip. As soon as you start to turn open to the right, the pelvis shifts with you. So shift the pelvis away as you twist, balancing those actions. And then top arm up. Good. And then we'll turn to face the floor, heel toe the feet in a little closer. I'm still going to stay pretty wide for a wide-legged squat. Take your weight to your heels. Sit the pelvis down a bit as you use your arms to open the inner thighs. You should feel like an inner thigh stretch, not in the hip crease. You can hug in to balance out that action. And then take hands to just above the knees. And as you dip one shoulder down, push that same side leg open. Alternate sides a few times. Come back to center, find the weight in the heels. And we'll come to about a perpendicular shin. Roll the tops of the thighs out so that you can bring the torso more vertical, pelvic floor facing the floor, and then stretch the arms up. 3 breaths here. Drive the heels down and isometrically apart to straighten the legs. Inhale. Exhale, release the arms. And then we'll bring the feet together, come to the top of the mat. Inhale, circle the arms. Exhale, sit into chair pose. If you're looking to restore the lumbar curve after the forward fold, lift your heels. If it felt good to round forward in the low back, keep the heels down. Inhale here. Exhale, fold forward, round the spine. Inhale, halfway up, flatten the spine. Exhale, bend the knees and step or hop back to plank pose. Shift forward and back, rocking the pose. And then come to downward facing dog. Feel the butt sticking up. Feel the stretch of the back body. And then pull hands towards feet isometrically. Come into up dog. Adjusting the feet to your preference. Feel the back body shortening. Front body stretching. Exhale back to dog. Inhale into up dog, holding the pose, few breaths. Exhale, dog. And then come down to hands and knees, and we'll swing the legs around in front into Baddha Konasana again. And making sure you're off your gluteal muscles. You can always sit on the edge of a blanket and relaxing the legs, and we kind of see where the legs are at. So hopefully a little more level. And then let's take the hands behind you. If you're a little short and tight in the abdominals, I'm going to show you from the side view. It's just kind of feeling the pose. The tendency is for me, for the low back to round, just the openness of the shape is kind of makes the pelvis tuck under. So if that's true for you, you're going to take your hands behind you and push down until the lumbar curve moves in and get yourself more vertical. Now, some of you are already here pretty effortlessly, and in fact, you might be more like this in the pose. And if that's you, I want you to bring your hands to your shins instead and push your feet away, push your feet down and away into the floor. You can even push your hands away a bit to get yourself more vertical, or push with the feet, pull with the hands to bring a very rounded upper back more into neutral spine. So you see how you can use these push-pull actions, feet and hands, to shape the spine. Good. And we'll lift the hips into like a reverse plank in Baddha Konasana. So I'm going to walk my hands further back And draw the shoulders back. The upper back is firm. I'm going to drag my heels towards my sit bones so that I get more arch in my low back. And that just feels yummy. And if that doesn't feel good for you, you're doing the opposite. You're pushing your feet away from you to reduce the curve and tone the tummy. Once you've got that, your best guess, lift the hips up. You can shift forward and back here. This is a chest opener, so hopefully the work of the heels, outer heels pushing down is stabilizing the sacrum, feels quiet in the low back, and you just feel stretch in the upper chest. Okay. And then come down. If, however, you're just feeling it in the low back, change your strategy with your feet and make sure the shoulders stay back as you lift up. We're going to do this pose 3 times, so 2 more times on your own. Observing the height of the knees. Once you lower back down, finish off with your 3rd time if you haven't done it yet. Check that the knees are level. And then release down. Very good. Straighten the left leg. Use your left hand to bring the right knee upright, and we'll take our seated twist variation. It's a leaning back variation to help draw that back shoulder back, and then the front shoulder moves forward. As you do that, the pelvis will want to roll open to the right. We're twisting right towards the bent knee. Instead, push hand and bent knee into one another and try to guide the pelvis counterclockwise to the left. And I'm using my feet to keep the lumbar curve, pulling back through both feet to tone the back body. You might be pushing both feet forward and away, dropping into more abdominal support, reducing the curve. Look towards the back hand. Good. And look straight ahead. We'll release, switch sides. Very good. And then we'll bring right leg into a baby cradle action. See if you can flex the ankle. Rock the leg. And then we'll bring right ankle over left knee. And we have a couple of options here. You can put the fist under the left knee and fold forward to get your outer hip stretch and the low back stretch for those of you who have a hyperlordosis. I don't. So I'm going to instead bend the left knee, bring my hands behind me, and I'm going to use my hands to maintain tone in the back as I walk my butt closer to my front foot, and instead do an upright figure 4 pose. So now I just have an outer hip stretch. I'm not stretching my low back, and I just am enjoying the hip stretch. Feels great. Okay. And then press yourself up to vertical, manually switch the legs. So we're picking up the legs with the hands so the hip joint stays relaxed. Flex the left ankle as you baby cradle the left leg in your hand, in your arms. Relax the hip joint. Get it so it feels passive. Don't shake the baby, but you can shake your leg. Good. And then once it feels like the hip joint softened, we cross Left ankle over right knee. If you hyperextend, please lift that knee with your fist, fold forward, enjoy the deep stretch to the hamstring and the low back and the outer hip stretch. If instead you're making sure that you don't overstretch the back, take your hands behind you, roll the shoulders back, feel the back muscles firm, lift the pelvis, bring it any amount closer to that front foot, and just go for a clean outer hip stretch. Good. And then we'll exit the shape. Make your way onto your back. Cross right ankle over left knee and then draw the foot closer to the left hip crease. Straighten the left leg on the floor. Allow the right knee to fall open, monitoring the shape of your lumbar curve. When it wants to arch up or the ribs want to pop up, zip up, tone. And we're going for a TFL stretch just to the outside of the hip point. If you want deeper, walk your upper body over to your left, away from the bent knee, even taking right arm overhead. And then walk your way back to center. Release. And cross left ankle over right knee. Use your hand to drag the foot closer to the right hip crease. You're pointing the foot and that left knee might lift up and then we just let it fall with gravity, toning the belly. Don't let the ribs pop up either. And then optional is to walk your upper body to your right, left arm overhead. Breathe. And come back to center. Release the leg. Kind of wiggle your butt from side to side, shaking out the hips, and then let that undulate the whole spine. Kind of wiggle your arms and your head. If you're not on a sticky mat, this works even better. And release your shaking and you're ready for Shavasana. If you feel like you need to hug your knees in, please do so. And then if you felt like you needed to do that, you probably need something under your knees or under your thighs like a bolster or a big pillow. Drop into your space, drop into stillness, the fullness of now. Let seconds grow into minutes. Minutes grow into hours. And these few moments of Shavasana expand exponentially into a feeling of vacation, time off, no routine, letting go. Stay heavy and steady, feeling the earth beneath you. Imagine you've dropped into your otherworldly space where the end of time meets the fantasy realm. You're in that magical space. You can walk up to the bowl filled with water. Water is shimmering, crystal-like. And you can gaze down into its depths or see the reflection mirrored back to you. Notice what you see. And thank your insight and your guides, your imagination for what you saw. Swing your leg over your unicorn and gallop away. Go for a nice long ride on your unicorn, or you could come back to this time and space, stretching out the body long. Feel your three-dimensionality. Feel yourself rooted in this space. Roll to your side. And come up to an easy seat. And bring the hands to heart center, bow the head. Humble before life and all it has to show us and teach us. May we be open to change. May we be diligent in our self-care and creating safe spaces. Namaste. Thanks for joining me, guys. Have a great weekend.